Welcome back to the Tip of the Ice-Burgh podcast, brought to you as always by Inside the Penguins. I'm Nick Berlansky. That's Nick Horwat, talking Pittsburgh Penguins hockey right now. And this segment actually comes to us via a listener question from Zach DeRosa on Twitter. He says, if Dubas is able to clear up cap space by shedding Petrie, Ruda, Granlund, would you take a risk by signing Patrick Kane if he takes a low-cost 1-year deal? What say you, Horwat?
There's a lot of players I would take on 1-year deals. 1-year deals it's not that they're, simple, easy contracts, but there's plenty of players I would take on 1-year deals. And this also will kind of fall back into part of what we discussed with Zach and Tyler yesterday on their show. A backup plan for Erik Karlsson could involve a forward instead.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of trying to land another defenseman, maybe you shoot for someone. I think it was Smitty that said a middle six forward. On this team at this day and age, that's likely exactly what Patrick Kane is. A middle six guy that might still be able to score some goals for you. Didn't have the greatest of seasons last year, but I think we would take 21. He had in total 73 games between Chicago and the New York Rangers. 21 goals in 73 games. I think we would take that from second line next to Evgeny Malkin. Which wing is he?
He's the right winger.
Right winger?
Left shot, right wing.
See, and then what does that do? That bumps Brian Rust down to the third line, maybe. Maybe Rickard Rakell to the third line if Mike Sullivan really feels that. Maybe Patrick Kane plays on the third line because he's coming off of an injury and is also on the wrong side of 30. He's going to be 35 in November. So, I mean, yeah, it's all of a sudden another aging player that old Yinzers don't want to see. Don't want to see added to this lineup because we're probably going to be the oldest team in the league again. Get ready for that. But I think if you're able to afford it and able to cut it for one season, like I said, there's a lot of players I would take on for one season. Patrick Kane is absolutely one of them. For a year to see what he can still do. Middle six guy, especially if you fall out on Karlsson. Fire away. Why not? Like I said with the Karlsson deal, it's just time to have some fun. It's the end of Crosby and Malkin's career. It's time to just throw stuff against the wall and see what sticks, but wisely in a smart way. And I think Patrick Kane will be in a smart way, especially if it's just 1 year.
You mentioned that he's coming off of an injury. He underwent hip resurfacing surgery in June, and the recovery timetable would be between 4 to 6 months. So at the latest, you're looking around a mid to late December return for Patrick Kane to the NHL. Now, here's the interesting thing about this. One, Patrick Kane, around the time that the news of that surgery came out, Patrick Kane had made it known that he would like to go back to the New York Rangers and play for his childhood team. Okay, the only problem is New York Rangers are in a little bit of a cap crunch. They obviously signed K-Andre Miller to a large contract extension. They're trying to deal with Alexis Lafreniere. As of right now, they might not have the space to bring back Patrick Kane. The other interesting tidbit in this is Patrick Kane's agent, Pat Brisson, who is also the agent for Sidney Crosby. Is there a connection there? Is there a desire there from Patrick Kane to play with somebody that their careers have been on parallel trajectories but never really intersected, right? I mean, Patrick Kane and Sidney Crosby have played each other, but considering one was in the Western Conference most of his career, the other one's in the Eastern Conference, they never matched up in the playoffs. They never faced off in the finals. These two careers have been parallel for 15, 16, 17 seasons. Is there a desire on Kane's part to join up with basically the other side of the pillow, right? It's the flip side of the coin for somebody who has been a Chicago Blackhawk great for his entire career to say, okay, what was the other most successful team in the cap era besides the team that I played on? That's the Pittsburgh Penguins, Sidney Crosby, Evgeny Malkin, and Chris Letang. Does he have any desire to join up with them and try to get a fourth Stanley Cup together instead of separately?
It's hard to say no to it, right?
I mean, it would be a very interesting storyline.
It would be, yeah. And if he really does want to return to the Rangers, I mean, as of right now, the Rangers are projected to have about $2 million in cap space, and they still have to sign Lafreniere. if they're able, they'd have to make some movements, make some adjustments if they wanted to add Patrick Kane. And when you mention the fact that he's going to be missing at least until December, at least till November, December, you have to wonder what kind of money he's going to make, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
genuinely, how much can you earn when you're going to be missing a good chunk of the season? Even if, especially on just a 1 year deal, like how much can you honestly uh, demand? It can't be that much, can it?
Well, here's one quote from Pat Brisson in the New York Post around the time of the surgery. He said, quote, "He's not thinking about hockey at the moment. He's thinking about recovery and getting healthy. If you offered me a 1 or 2 year deal at $7 million, I'm not sure I'd even look at it right now." So does that tell you that that's around what they're hoping for?
The fact that he
I
said a
don't
number at
know.
all, yeah.
Yeah, the fact that he said a number at all makes it seem like 7 is probably what he'd like to see. 5 is probably more around what he's going to make at the age of 35 coming off of a hip surgery, going on a short-term deal, but
Yeah.
it that just seems like a little too much, especially for a player that here's the biggest con about him. He's really just a power play specialist at this point, is he not? Like he's got great hands, he's got great vision, he's always going to be the facilitator that he's been his entire career. But how much better is he going to look after this hip surgery at 35 years old? That's the question, right? And are you really willing to pay $7 million for a guy that, yes, he was injured, but last year showed signs of deterioration and decline? He had 57 points in 73 games, which, yes, that would be great to add to the Pittsburgh Penguins next season. But they have so many players at that price tag already that do you really want to add another one? Now, again, the caveat coming from Zach was Dubas already had to have shed Petrie, Ruda, Granlund. I'm not sure where Karlsson is in this equation. We're just going to leave that to the side. But if you shed those three, then yeah, sure. Obviously, you need another defenseman because you're shedding 2 right shot defensemen, and there's no mention of Erik Karlsson. There's no mention of anybody else. It's probably what Ruhwedel and Ty Smith at that point who you have left in the organization. But it would be fun. It's more of a move I would make on my second BlackBerry on NHL 13 than a move that I would consider making right now at the NHL level if I was the Pittsburgh Penguins president of hockey ops.
Yeah, it's just kind of a silly, goofy mood season
It's
question, and I
yeah.
and I don't hate the question. Heading into last season, uh, I can remember, I think it was Frank Seravalli mentioned that don't be surprised if the Penguins were in on a Patrick Kane trade at some point or another. Now, Ron Hextall didn't want to get involved in any sort of big trade like that, so we missed out on that opportunity. And it would have cost an arm and a leg for us anyway, given the situation we were in, and it would still cost an arm and a leg. And even $5 million seems like that seems a little steep to me, considering even for 1 year, considering coming off of an injury, you're only going to play about half the season, and not that he's not a bad player, he's a future Hall of Famer, no doubt, but what else do you have to offer other than, man, you could score on the power play?
Mm-hmm.
And I got nothing else on it. It's a great fun idea. It really is. I think it's really interesting, but there's just not much. Especially, if we miss out on Kane, I would or Karlsson, then let's see what we can toss around as an idea. Adding Karlsson though pretty much takes us out of that running.
Pretty much. Yeah. I mean, even if you shed those 3 players that were mentioned in the question and you had Karlsson,
Mm-hmm.
there's not going to be a lot of space left. But, here's the difference. If you don't land Karlsson and all of a sudden Kyle Dubas says, you know what? We're not happy with the team the way it's currently constructed. We need another move. He buys out Granlund. There's $4 million. He trades Ruda and doesn't retain anything. That's $5-6 million. All of a sudden, okay, Patrick Kane at $5 million. Come on, there's your added offensive input. No, it's not to the level of what Erik Karlsson would bring you, but I mean, what are you losing in that scenario where Ruda goes out? You have Petrie still, which is unfortunate, but he's still a player that, when healthy last season, did have some really good moments. And then you put in Ty Smith on the third pairing. You put in Chad Ruhwedel on the third pairing. Yes, it's not as, sexy as adding Erik Karlsson and still having Jan Ruda and then putting Ty Smith on the left side and having 3 true offensive defensemen run right down your 3 pairings. But I mean, it is something that would certainly grab headlines, and I do think that the only thing I'm trying not to do now is the thing I'm cautioning people about with Tristan Jarry. Don't get in the mindset so much of the "what have you done for me lately?" because this player was playing with an injury, right? Tristan Jarry, he struggled. He was playing with an injury, but he was good when he was healthy. Patrick Kane was playing with an injury last year, struggled, but the year prior he had 90 some points on Chicago. So again, don't want to fall into that trap. Not sure what you're going to see from him, but the last thing we've seen from Patrick Kane was that he didn't add much to the New York Rangers roster after that trade, a trade in which the Rangers decided, you know what, Patrick Kane's been saying he wants to come here all season long. Let's go out and get Vladimir Tarasenko instead. And then they were basically forced to make the move because Patrick Kane was unhappy that the Rangers went a different direction. So they went around, made a different move, and ended up actually acquiring Patrick Kane at the end of the day. And he didn't really add much there. He provides little to no defensive support. You know, there's pros and cons to this thing. But at the end of the day, I feel like, you know, obviously Karlsson is plan A. I feel like there's better plan Bs than Patrick Kane.
Yeah, there absolutely is. And Patrick Kane is just a fun option. It's just that idea of another Hall of Famer to add to the list of players to join this team. I mean, yeah, 92 points the season prior isn't bad, especially on a bad Chicago Blackhawks team. It's just not one of those things you focus on right now. It's interesting, but no, if as a backup plan, maybe that's a plan C, right? It's all right. Now we really need to dig deep to add to this team.
Yeah, maybe if you can't. I mean, I don't know when. I got to look into that. Offer sheets confuse me. So, you know, when can you offer sheet Troy Terry? I mean, that's a name Smitty brought up yesterday on Around the 412, and I was like, man, that is an interesting scenario going on out there in Anaheim with obviously Troy Terry being an RFA heading to arbitration, and same goes with Trevor Zegras. So it is certainly something to monitor out there, not to mention they have a goaltender that doesn't want to be there. Not that the Penguins are in a goaltender sweepstakes. They do have 35 of them under contract right now. But we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, let's have a little bit of fun, Horwat.
Mm-hmm.
The series Quarterback has hit Netflix. Rave reviews. What happens if you bring that to the NHL? We'll discuss that after the break.